Hi all, as promised, here is your mini lecture on how to write some personal statements for the college application. I just want to clarify, these personal statements are called multiple things, right? Anytime the college is asking you to write a personal essay, an essay, a personal statement, any of those is a version of what I'm going to talk about here, right? Those are all specific, or not specific, those are all basically the same idea, okay? So this little lecture is meant to help you guys figure out exactly what you need to do in order to help you write successful personal statements, okay? So first of all, what's the point of doing this? Couple things. This is an important document that you submit with your application because what it does is it allows the college to see very specific personal characteristics of who you are as a student. It's also a writing sample, so it'll help the college determine if you are a good writer and if you're a good thinker, right? There's a way to write these things that demonstrates both of those. It also is a chance for you to kind of explain your current position in life and how you've interpreted that position, right? It's trying to show like a level of maturity and an intellect that you've developed throughout your high school and how you're ready for college in that particular way. And the last and possibly the most important point of all of this is that it helps represent who you are beyond the numbers of your application, right? So it helps them understand something beyond your GPAs and your ACT scores and your rank. It actually allows them to understand that there's a heart behind all of those numbers. This is a chance for you to actually show your personality through your writing, okay? So how do we deal with these? The unfortunate thing about the personal statement in colleges is that they have one of two options for prompts. Either they have some awful prompts, and some examples you can see here, and then sometimes they don't even have prompts, which means you have to pick your own prompt, right? So I'm going to talk to you about through how to approach some of that. First of all, like I said, some colleges give these very specific prompts. They aren't very creative. In fact, they're very general and very vague. Um, and so some things to keep in mind is that every prompt is looking for you to thoughtfully and creatively, uniquely write about yourself, right? The problem is that these prompts are overly general, right? If you look at those again, what is your biggest fear? Describe a significant experience in your life. Those are very general prompts. And so the problem is that many students fall into answering generally, right? It's a general question, so why not provide a general response? The trick is to figure out how do you provide a response that is not general. You want it to be a unique angle on that particular prompt, and you want it to be as specific to your own life uh, as you possibly can. You want to make it as specific to your own life as you possibly can. Okay, so that's really important, is that even though the prompts are general, you need to be as specific as you possibly can. The other option is that you get an open-ended prompt, right? It's scary because you have to pick your own. In this case, it also has an opportunity because in this case, you get to pick something specific and unique that you want to write about yourself, okay? The next slide is going to have a couple of prompts that you can kind of look at as maybe prompts that you can use for your personal essay. Again, these are sometimes overly general. They're a little bit more exciting, I think. But if you have an open-ended prompt and you're asked to write your own prompt, this is possibly a way to go. Is you can pick one of these prompts, or you can pick about something that you just want to write about yourself that you want to show this college, right? So that addresses the particular prompts. Now I want to begin with some general advice, right? So say you have to write this personal statement, you know what the prompt is, where do you even begin? The hardest part is to get started. Okay, I remember when I was applying to college, that was one of the hardest things, was this personal statement. Where do I even begin with this? And my lovely English teacher, who happens to be Miss Curley, offered some of the best advice, where she said don't start with what's general, start with something that is specific, right? And in fact, what she did is she gave me some writing activities, which I'm going to do with you all. She gave me some writing activities that didn't automatically seem like they were related to the prompt at all, but once you started doing them, you could find a way to make them relate to the prompt, right? And so that's kind of where how you can get started, is maybe the prompt is kind of annoying even. Ignore it and write with something that is interesting. Okay, so to help you with that, I've attached several writing activities to this module for you to look at. If you complete one or a couple of them, it will help you to begin writing specifically, uniquely, and in a way that is a lot more interesting than the question allows you to represent, right? Another option is to do a free write, and that's where you challenge yourself to sit down for 10 minutes and without lifting your fingers from the keyboard or your hand from the paper, you just write whatever comes to mind about yourself, right? You just write it down, get as detailed as you possibly can, and after 10 minutes, and you have to keep writing, right? Even if you don't know what to write, you write something over and over and over again until something else comes to your mind. But you jot this down, and usually what happens, what you'll find yourself doing is you'll find some train of thought that you've written down that could possibly be the seed to a really awesome personal statement, right? So that's another option. So, more general advice, how do you even structure this thing? So, the beginning is very important for a personal statement. It's not like an essay. It's not like where I'm asking you to write a pill. It's not like a journal entry. It's not like how I'm asking you to write pill paragraphs. In fact, you shouldn't write pill paragraphs for this. You should write something a little bit different. What you could do instead, here's an example, or here's something that you could do for your beginning. First thing, you want to be immersive. And what that means is you want to immediately immerse your audience in your situation. I think of it as kind of a camera. You want to start out zoomed in on a specific moment and then use the rest of the essay to kind of gently pull back and explain how that specific moment relates to a specific prompt, right? One way to zoom in is to use a hellacious first sentence, and what hellacious basically means is it's a sentence that seems confusing at first, but jars the reader and pushes them into continue reading, right? Here's some examples of hellacious first sentences, and they're all pulled from some successful personal statements. The last one is my personal favorite. If I had to do it again, I'd wear better pants. Imagine reading that as a first sentence. You're automatically zoomed in. You're like, well, what? You want to talk about pants? First of all, it's a really absurd way to start. It's unique, and it also makes me want to read the rest of the essay. Whatever he's talking about has to do with a situation where he was required to wear pants he wasn't pleased with initially, right? So that would be a really interesting way to begin your a personal statement. And some of these other ones are also really interesting. What else do you want to include in the beginning? You want to make sure after you have your hellacious first sentence, you also need to begin contextualizing your sentence experience. So, yeah, you want to throw the readers off a little bit, but you need to then gently pull back and kind of let us know, okay, so what is the context of this particular sentence, right? Why are you starting us off this way? What larger event or idea or person or whatever you're writing about is that sentence linked to? And gently begin pulling us off back. The end of the beginning also needs to begin highlighting a specific response to the prompt. You can think of it as sort of a thesis to your personal statement, right? It should begin highlighting that main idea of your personal statement. So you started out super specific, you pulled back gently, and by the end of sort of your introduction, you should have a good direction as to where you're going to go, okay? So what happens after the beginning, and what's the first half of the paper, the personal statement? Next thing you need to do is you need to make sure you're using concrete detail. And for an example of this would be using a great use of imagery, evoking all of our five senses, that describes the person or the moment or the situation or whatever the basis of the answer is to that particular prompt you're answering, right? Describe everything you possibly can in the best detail as possible. This is where good writing begins, is using great details to get your point across, right? One way to help make sure that you're getting those details is using strong verbs and using strong adjectives throughout. Don't settle for those cheesy, sad words, right? You want to get really to the nitty-gritty of your language and use those really strong adjectives and verbs throughout. You also want to try to give the reader a clear sense of your experience, how you felt, right? You are trying to relay and try to describe a particular situation, but you also want to explain how you felt about this, because the whole personal statement is also a moment of reflection, right? How are you supposed to feel about whatever the prompt is that you're writing about, the details within that prompt, right? The second half continued here. The second half also needs to begin explaining how, I'm sorry, it's not continuing. This is, so what do you do with the second half? The second half needs to begin explaining how the specifics explained in the first half actually begin answering the prompt. So you started out with specific concrete details, now back up a little bit and start explaining how that's relevant to some of the larger ideas, an implication that you're trying to find about yourself, right? How are you going to begin connecting those ideas? And these paragraphs need to be all about reflection and connection. For example, and here's two examples. If you've just described a positive experience or role model in great detail, take the second half to describe how you are better and stronger. How maybe you've taken on some of those characteristics. Sorry for the typo. Right. So you zoomed in. Now you're zooming out. Part of that zooming out is figuring out a reflection and connection. Also, if you describe a negative experience, obstacle, learning, etc., explain how you've grown, what you've learned, and how ultimately you had a positive outcome. That's also going to help you kind of reflect and figure out what the details you described in the beginning are going to explain some of the larger ideas. Okay. Continued here. This second half requires that you brag about yourself. Remember that you are trying to sell yourself to this college, and the only way you can sell yourself is by promoting your best qualities, okay? The reflections you make need to show who you are is awesome, amazing, and brilliant, and why you are the best choice for that college, okay? So shed your modesty. I know some people have a hard time bragging about themselves. Other people have no problem at all, right? So you want to shed your modesty and you brag, but the issue is you don't want to be cocky or arrogant, right? So there's a balance to strike. You want to show that you're competent and that you are someone who the school would benefit from, but you don't want to be overly confident, right? You don't want to come off as arrogant, because that's a turnoff in writing, okay?